Welcome to another episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined by Chris, the technician Aceto, on this September 4th, 2017 afternoon, Labor Day. Chris, the last day of summer, which I find ironic, because now that I live in Florida, summer never ends here, but in New York and in Maine, it certainly does. And is it true that you told my wife it was 48 degrees in Maine already?
Listen, yes, I was in Miami, and it never went below like 80.
Right.
And when we got off the plane in Maine, my 4-year-old said, "Is it snowing out?" It was 48 when we got off the plane.
Wow. That's a big drop. Yeah, so I haven't noticed any difference in the weather. So to me, Labor Day is almost like a meaningless, significant day in the summer. Because usually, when you're in, like the Northeast, it's like, oh no, you could almost smell winter coming. You start to see the leaves are starting to change, and people going back to school. This week in Florida, they already started school like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
I heard.
So I mean, your kids are homeschooled, so it doesn't matter. Did you start homeschooling on the Maine schedule or on the Florida schedule?
We start on the Maine schedule, but I still homeschool them when they're away on life's lessons.
Yeah, I noticed you, Chris.
I try to give them life lessons because I can't give them math because I don't know math. In English, my grammar is terrible. I don't speak a foreign language. I use Google and a calculator. So, right, they're doing their homeschool stuff, and a lot of it is over my head.
Yeah, they're doing. Chris has got them doing leases for tenants. that's
what you call this. Making photocopies and
smart. You gotta get them into the family business, early on, so they know what's going on.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to learn things.
Well, if they like what you're doing, then they'll be great at it because you're starting them so young. You had to learn all that when you were as an adult. Imagine if you learned that when you were like 12 years old. How good you'd be by the time you turned 20.
Well, before we came on the air, what I told you
You'd
is,
be like Trump.
You said, "Yeah, I mean, I love hard work and I hate laziness, and that's a character flaw I think of."
Yeah, but I think it's an advantage for us.
Allow
but I think
work to take over your life.
Well, it depends on that. If that's something you enjoy doing, my quote. I usually wait till the quote of the week toward the end, but we should go right into the quote of the week because it really is in the light of what you just said. And the quote of the week is by a doctor, and he says, "A doctor must work 18 hours a day and 7 days a week. If you cannot do that, and you cannot console yourself to this idea, get out." And isn't that true?
Funny.
I mean, it applies not just to being a doctor. I mean, I did get out of being a doctor because of that very reason, because I didn't want to be a doctor for 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I don't mind being a bodybuilder and being in the bodybuilding industry and being a health, information provider, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think a lot of bodybuilders don't want to make that commitment either, and that's why they're not good at it. So get out. That's that's the delivery. That's the message.
Well, you got to do what you love to be able to do it all the time. But at the same time, sometimes you can do what you love and you're not good at it.
I think you can be good at anything you do if you put enough time and effort into it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And if you like it, obviously if you hate what you're doing.
No, you got a point. You got a good point.
Because think about it. I've seen some I've helped some, and I'm sure you have some too. Some of these people who have come to me for asking for advice and saying, "Hey, Dave, I want to be a pro." Everyone says that to me. And I'm like, and I never say no to anyone because I don't know what people are capable of. This person I worked with for maybe the course of 5 years, the first 3 of which I thought he was completely delusional, but it didn't matter because he believed it and I believed in him, and he turned out to be a good bodybuilder. I'm not going to mention any names, but he turned out to be a very good bodybuilder, and it just goes to show you with enough determined. Hey, Bob Grushkin told me I would never be a good bodybuilder before I really got started.
But prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, okay. Prove me wrong. Yeah. I had dinner with Rob Messino last night. Rob used to be married to Denise Messino.
Oh yes, yeah.
And Rob also he ran the magazine with her that they did, the Muscle Elegance, and they do the website Muscle Pinup Girls, and he also was he had a gym in Westchester back in, I guess it was the late 80s, early 90s, called East Coast Fitness. Mm-hmm. It was the craziest gym of all time because there was a lot of good bodybuilders up in the Westchester area at the time training there. big guys, and some tough guys too. Like my friend Charlie Arms trained there, and Greg Valentino actually started there as well. Not that he's a big time pro bodybuilder. Angelo Vizela, I don't know if you remember Angelo.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Remember how good he was? What a freak.
Yes, very good.
If he didn't go to jail, he probably would have been a good pro.
Yeah.
Who else was there? Fran Volpe. You know Fran.
I remember Fran Volpe. He was very good.
Mike Quinn was training there for a little while when he was living with Fran Volpe. There was a lot of big guys up in that gym, and it was it was like they were all tough guys, and a lot of wise guys trained there. And it was a crazy era, of just insanity, going on there. And there's nothing like that today anymore. It just doesn't exist anymore, because what happened was there wasn't a lot of gyms. So if you were a bodybuilder, you had to find the bodybuilding gym. So everyone went to that one gym. Nowadays, there's so many freaking gyms everywhere, that you could, and even the poshiest of posh gyms have nice equipment now. So you could theoretically squat 600 pounds in LA Fitness if you really wanted to,
Sure.
They have equipment. Back then, you couldn't do that. You had to go to like Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne didn't have the equipment you needed, so you had to find a hardcore gym. In Westchester, that was Rob's place, East Coast Fitness. And it was, he eventually obviously moved to Florida, but because he was into, so speaking about people who are into multiple things, he's into shells. He's he goes diving at night and he finds like invertebrates, different kind of snails and clams and all kinds of weird stuff that no one has ever found. And he has actually I think he has two of these things named after him, from what he tells me. And he goes and just dives, he goes on diving tours and stuff. So he wanted to be able to do his passion. So he moved to Florida, right to Fort Myers, where I am. And he would go to Sanibel Island and he would go diving off there. And when he wasn't, going to bodybuilding shows and doing that. And he had a gym down here for a while as well, back in the late 90s, I guess. So you got to pursue your passion. That's all there is to it. Do what you like to do. And don't worry about it. Everything else will take care of itself. But by the same token, don't give up a job that's paying $150,000 a year to take a job for $10 an hour if you have a lot of bills to pay. I think, Chris, a lot of people don't realize that there's a transition period. You can't just say, "Fuck it, I'm quitting being a doctor and I'm gonna start personal training people," because it's not gonna work well for you. Not at all. Anyway, let's talk about what's been going on, Chris. We got Olympia, the big Olympia week coming up here. Obviously, the Mr. Olympia won't be till the following week, but this is the week we kind of do the most coverage. Tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. we will have, I don't know if we're going to stream it live. I'm going to see if we can do this live. We're going to have Jay Cutler, 4-time Mr. Olympia, on Iron Debate with you, Chris, and John, and myself, and we'll be talking about some controversial topics, I guess you could say, with regard to the Olympia in terms of who we think is going to win and all those great things. And, Jay, well, let me ask you, Jay better than anyone. Will Jay go out there on the line and give his true opinion of whether Phil is going to win or not?
Of course, he's gonna. He always gives his absolute, genuine answer. At least having been retired, he does so, and he'll pick Phil Heath.
He will pick Phil. He doesn't think anyone's going to beat him?
No, I haven't talked to Jay, but he won't even give it half a second thought. You watch when we show up on Tuesday, he'll say Phil.
And is that just because...
He'll say, well, these guys, you watch, he'll say, these guys, you're going up against the champ, he's got the confidence, nobody's going to beat him on the back double, you watch. Ramy's the dark horse, the wow factor. Could come down to those two. He's got to nail his condition, and then he'll talk about everyone else.
You even sound like him. That's great. What do you think he'll think about the 212 division? You think he's going to think Flex Lewis is a shoo-in?
No, I don't think he'll think Flex is a shoo-in. He'll talk up because he's impressed with Ascanani, his width.
And obviously Jose works for him, so.
Yeah, and he'll talk good about Jose because he knows, Jose's, dangerous, and he'll leave it open for everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think is the most dangerous in that 212 lineup to challenge Flex?
Um, let's see. I think you really realistically you have to consider Jose.
Jose's the only one with legs. Who could stand next to Flex?
The problem with Jose last year's Olympia, I mean, you just got to backtrack with the history. 2015 was the last call-out was Jose and Flex, and that was Jose's all-time best. If you go back the year before, the last call-out was Eduardo, Jose, and Flex, and that was like a multiple pose. We got to figure out who's winning here. Mm-hmm. Showdown. So in those 2 years, Jose was in that last call-out. The crazy thing is he was in the last call-out last year, coming off a serious knee injury.
And he didn't look his best, yeah.
And he didn't look his best, and he lost 40 pounds in 7.5 weeks. And he still locked down third place. Mm-hmm. This year, he's lined up all his ducks. He's very serious. He looks great. His legs are definitely, back. They look great. A lot of people will say this, I brought my back up, and, they didn't bring their back up. Or, I brought my legs back up, and they really didn't. They're still weak. I can tell you they look great. So Jose has to be a big factor in there. Ascanani has to be a factor based on the fact that he got second last year and won the Arnold and has, the width on the back shots. And then, if I'm a competitor, the guy that I'm most worried about in terms of the what if is David Henry.
Right.
Yes, he has weak legs, but they're better than Ascanani, so that crowds out Ascanani. His condition is definitely better than Ascanani's. On occasion, he brings a level of conditioning that can beat everyone.
Yeah.
And he's dangerous. I'm helping Jose. I fear and worry more about David Henry than Ascanani or Flex, believe it or not. Because you know what Flex is going to look like. He's not going to be peeled because he's never peeled. He's going to be deeply separated, very round and full, and the tallest guy up there with a good flow and no weak body parts. Right. But the expectation, he'll meet that expectation. David Henry, on occasion, pulls stuff from nowhere and comes in with a total different look. Sometimes he nails it 1,000%. Actually, last year at the Olympia, I thought he was very overlooked. So he did nail it last year, and he nailed it at the Arnold as well this year.
I think what we have to realize also is that when the favorites are off a little bit, Henry's a little bit like Dexter.
I knew you'd say that.
He's very dangerous, but you don't notice how dangerous he is if there's people that have a lot of wow factor up on the stage who are in shape. But when the wow factor guys are not quite in the best shape of their life, like, let's face it, Jose was not in the best shape of his life at the Olympia last year, whatever the reason is. Henry started to look better than he usually does against Jose. Now, if Flex is off, the same thing can happen. Henry starts looking like, well, this guy's really freaking grainy, and yeah, his legs are maybe not that big, but look at the separation and the glutes. And so I think that Henry has to be at his best, and I think some of the top guys need to be a little off, and that's when Henry makes them look bad, and that's when you start saying, maybe we should go with this guy. Because when Dexter won the Olympia in 2008, I don't think anyone thought beforehand that Dexter was going to win the Olympia, but, Jay was off. And when Jay's off, Dexter starts looking very appealing as the next best guy there, and that's really what happened with that 2008 Olympia. Dexter just was waiting in the wings, and Jay was off, left the door open, Dexter stepped in. So, is Flex going to come in off? I don't think he will, but, a lot of people have speculated, he's very upset over the death of Dallas McCarver, and we know that's to be the case. But you know what? Flex is a consummate professional. He probably was ready to compete 3 weeks ago. He was probably in shape. So I have no doubt that he's going to probably be at his best on stage. And I don't think anyone can beat him at his best at this point in time. I don't think we have a guy who's come out of the woodwork where we're like, holy mackerel, this guy is the heir apparent. Obviously, Jose is not, he's in his 40s. He says he's only competing one more year. The chances of him beating Flex, unless Flex came in terrible this year, are probably very slim to none. And quite frankly, I don't know, unless you want to correct me, I don't see any young 212 guys that are like blowing my socks off where I'm like, this guy's going to beat Flex anytime soon. Do you see any?
No, I don't think there's any 212 guys that can, jump into a lineup like this, for example, and yeah, here I am, I'm in the top 4. Just there's no one really on the horizon. I mean, you have to go back and look again at Jose's been training all those years. There's a level of density that a new guy won't get. And it's David Henry. Same thing. He's been training a long time. He's been competing as a pro a long time. There's a lot of mature, dense, fibery muscle that only comes with a long period of training under your belt. So, and getting back to Flex is, he's not. He still has to be at his best to win, because that's the whole point. 2015 he arguably could have lost.
Yes, I agree.
2014 he could have arguably lost, and we say, well, he wasn't at his best. Well, what is his best? Because even his not best is still very good. He doesn't even when he's not on. It's not like he's off. So some people believe that, this is his best just because he won that year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think he's, I think he's vulnerable if the circumstance. I think he's very vulnerable if he's not at his best. Meaning, if he's slightly not full, or if he's slightly, not as hard as he needs to be, I think the door's open.
Let me ask you another question. Let's switch gears to the open class for a minute.
But I could be wrong, you got to see them next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
We could go back to 2015. You and I were sitting next to each other, and I was like, shit, show's over. And until they did the last call-out, Flex exactly next to Jose. And they compared them and compared them and compared them. And it's like, you could easily make the argument for Jose winning that show. Yeah. And you could easily make it for Flex winning that show. In other words, they had different body types, different attributes, different strengths. Frankly, at that show, neither of them had many weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And so when you compare them, you get a better look. It's just like Dexter. When he comes out by himself, he looks great, but a lot of times he looks a lot better next to people.
Sure. I think it's going to be hard to displace Flex, but like you said, when he's off a little bit, he a lot of his issues rear their head at what's not so great about him, and that's the case. It happened with Phil Heath, a couple times. So yeah. Everyone's vulnerable. Ronnie in 2002, really, I mean, Gunther beat him at that show of strength right after the Olympia. I mean, so people are vulnerable if they're off. This is not a sport, that you can take lightly. You have to come in at your best, or people will pick your physique apart. And that's really, it's really not a sport of praise. It's a sport of criticism. That's who has the least flaws. That kind of.
To come to the defense of Flex and to come to the defense of Phil as well. The advantage that they have is, that we see them as unbeatable because they keep winning. But the disadvantage is, I feel that they're under the pressure of, I have to be at my best, because these guys, maybe Jose carbs up on 1,200 carbs and it doesn't work, or it does work. Flex can't take that risk.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because what if he spills? Same thing with Phil. Or the flip side is, let's say Flex says, I want to come in as, dehydrated as possible. Maybe it doesn't work for him, whereas it might work for someone else in the lineup who's trying to challenge him. Those guys have so much to lose.
Yeah. And we're,
it forces them to some degree to play conservative.
Well, and as a fan and as a judge, you always hold the greatest version of the person that you're judging in your head. So what Flex looked like at his best. If he's not at his best, but yet he's still
so critical.
It's hard. It's hard to say. How did we say this guy's wins? But you know what? If he's still better than everyone else, then he's the champ, obviously.
Dude, you know how critical how that works against Phil. Me myself, I've gone to prejudgings where we're doing the wrap up, and I'm tearing him apart. And I think, what? As I'm speaking, I think I'm tearing him apart against his best. Because the night show, one day later, maybe he's 3% better, but you realize,
right.
Well, he's very, very, very impressive.
Yeah.
And he's landing in first place. And the second night, I'm kind of looking at what's up there rather than comparing him to his very best.
That's what bodybuilding is about. Now, let's switch to the open, back to the open for a second, and I want to just talk about. There's been rumors now. Remember, in I think it was August or maybe late July, AMI Weider extended a special invite to Kai Green to do the Olympia. Matter of fact, they even put him on the cover of the Olympia Flex issue, saying, "What if Kai beats Phil?" or something like that. So I don't know if they expected him to do it. Now, by everything I know and everything that's been released, it seems like Kai is not doing the Olympia or has no intention of doing the Olympia. From what Aaron Singerman said to people who are close to him, Kai has made no indication he's doing it. And I said to you, the greatest thing that Kai could ever do would be to not tell people and then show up at the press conference, ready to go and say, "Hey, look, maybe I'll jump up on stage," and it would be a great coup d'état for as far as media. And then I don't know if you said that would never happen because it wouldn't be good marketing for the Olympia, but I mean, there's rumors now people saying that they've seen pictures of Kai. The pictures are up out there online, and that people are saying this guy looks like he can do the Olympia tomorrow. I mean, do you think that there could be a possibility that Kai Green would jump into this Olympia?
I don't know, but I know this. Physically, he probably could, because how many times have we seen him guest pose in Pittsburgh, and he looks like he's 9 days away from the Olympia?
Well, he looks like he is now, because I've seen pictures of him out there. I don't remember who put them up, but I saw some really recent good
pictures of him, and he looks unbelievable. I mean, would be the news. That would be the drowning out news of the weekend, that Kai showed up at the press conference and that he's doing the show. Could you imagine if he showed up and he said he doesn't have his entry fee, anything, and he says while all the fans are there, Steve and Jim, can I get in the show tomorrow? I guess that'd be Robin Chang's decision.
Yeah. I mean, is it possible?
I don't know. He's popular, dude. You know what? He's the thing about the Olympia is some people automatically create a buzz. Before it was always Ronnie J, Ronnie J. In terms of the buzz, the hype running into the show. The wild factor always was Kai coming into the show. Is he going to come in on? Is he going to come in off? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? And he always lived up to it. There was always some drama around Kai.
Put it this way. If Kai jumps into the show, first of all, I will take complete credit for the idea. Because Kai should say, Dave Palumbo got it right. That I want credit for that one, first of all. That's right off the bat. Secondly, it would add a level of excitement that I don't think anyone can even conceptually handle. It would be crazy. There'd be fists flying on stage, probably. I'm sure, from between Kai and Phil, because Phil would be mind fucked by that, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
Unless he knew, unless the whole thing was a setup, like a WWE type setup. But if Kai did it without telling anyone, because he just heard maybe my idea or he had the same idea himself, Phil would be going crazy. It would be nuts. Let's look at it from a Lee Thompson standpoint. What's the rule? Can they do that? I mean, if Kai shows up the day before the show, can he just jump in? I mean, since he has the special invite already,
who's making the decisions?
I don't know. Well, he'd have to sign the contract. Would they allow him to sign the contract
no,
the day before the show?
No, you don't even need to sign a contract. Whoever owns the show and makes the decisions. Remember when Trump was elected and he made all those executive orders?
Yeah.
And he held them up? Right?
Yeah, I guess you could.
Somebody has the ability, if you own the show, to make an executive decision.
I guess you're right.
Even if it's probably not in the paperwork. In other words, it's not in the IFBB Constitution or whatever you have, rules and regulations.
Now here's the one monkey wrench in my whole theory. He's doing this appearance at this Super League thing, and he's getting paid a ridiculous amount of money to do this. So I don't know if he'll be able to do it. He might say, "Guys, I got to take a lunch break." Jay, sorry, I got to take a lunch break. And he'll time the lunch break with the prejudging. Although actually he probably could do it because the prejudging's at night and so is the finals. So he could probably do the Super League thing during the day and then head over to the Orleans Arena for the prejudging Friday night, and then do the same thing on Saturday. He could moonlight, he could kill two birds with one stone.
He could.
I think it's brilliant. Probably never happened, but we could fantasize about it.
Hey, the Mayweather fight, McGregor had happened, so
true.
People said that would never happen.
True. See, that's what Kai should have gotten his managers, and they should have sat down and said, "Look, let's hammer this thing out the right way.
Get him into a room.
This is what I want. This is what I want money wise. It's like they gave Mayweather a certain amount of money, and what they should have done is they should have sold. Forget about the live streaming. No, I don't want to ruin it for everyone at home, but forget the live stream. They should have charged. Kai should have said, "Look, I'm going to jump into this show. You're going to sell 1 million pay-per-views on this thing." Okay, because I'm going to jump in at the last minute, and everyone is going to sign up for this stupid thing, and we're going to make this into a media circus. And whether Kai looked good or not, whether he won or not, who cares? Everyone would have wanted to watch this thing, don't you think?
I agree with you. I mean, we're 12 days out. If Kai was on his Facebook account today and made the announcement, I'm going to try to get in the show the last 12 days.
People go nuts.
Goodness. People would go, it'd just be the never ending. You'd be getting texts. Dave, I talked to so-and-so who talked to so-and-so. They saw Kai and he's losing his mind. He's not going to be ready. You get another text from Dave, I was just with Kai. He's way harder than everyone thinks. He's going to be ready. Dave, I've been with Kai, 4 different Olympias, and he's no worse off now condition-wise than he was at the previous ones.
Where's Don King when we need him? Don King's dropped off the face of the map. I guess he's out of boxing, but maybe he can make a comeback to promote one last big event, the Kai Green comeback at the Olympia.
Yeah, you should get him on live with.
Yeah, I should call him up.
Don King.
Yeah, I got to get a sit down with Don King in Vegas and say, Don, look, you're missing the boat here. This Kai Green guy is your next Muhammad Ali. You got to make this thing happen. Anyway, well, I don't know. We won't obviously know what happens.
I mean, regardless, without Kai Green, the show is still going to be off the charts. Yeah. Off the charts.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, the Olympia is exciting every year because it's the Super Bowl. Everyone wants to see, is Phil going to win another one or is he going to get knocked off? And we're all just as excited both ways. So yeah, it's just not knowing, I guess you could say. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there we don't really know how to. Big Rami's a big mystery too because of the whole Kuwait thing. We don't know if he's going to be good, if he's going to be bad, if he's going to be 340, if he's going to be 280. We don't. No one knows what's going on over there. You've got your stable of guys that you've been sending me secret pictures of that look really good, and we'll save the Olympia talk for tomorrow with Jay because I want to get his opinions on this. Now, the other big breaking news in the industry this past week, thank God it was no more people dying. Shawn Ray announced that he was leaving Muscular Development magazine and the website, which is kind of weird to hear an announcement like that 2 weeks before the Olympia weekend, which leads me to believe, why did he really leave? Now, he texted me, so I know it's 100% legit. He said he's going on to bigger and better things, and blah, blah, blah. And I asked him, of course, how much money he owed, and he said, no, we're caught up on money. So what is you have a very good read on people. Why would Shawn Ray 2 weeks before the Olympia not resign from MD? Well,
the first thing that came to my mind was when you told me that he resigned, I said, Nixon resigned.
You did. And pretty close to when Shawn resigned. And
then the second thing that came to mind was when recently the analogy is Trump had his economic advisors, all the bigwigs, CEOs of, some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies on an advisory board. And they got a little tired of him for lots of different reasons. One quit. The next day, another quit. Then 2 or 3 others quit. And there was, it was this big advisory board. And then Trump found out they were all going to quit, so he disbanded. He couldn't fire them, so because they weren't working for him. They were advising him, so he disbanded it before they all quit, and he got to save. The key word, he got to save face. Trump did. So rather than people having the ability to say, every and all of Trump's advisory board bailed on him.
Right.
He said, I'm disbanding it. So when I hear that he resigned, I wonder if he wasn't ripe to be fired.
Right, but would Blackman fire him 2 weeks before the Olympia? No way, I don't think so. Unless Blackman was getting pressure to fire him, I don't know. You were very
the timing is odd. I mean, you regardless of anything else, the timing, as you pointed out, is very odd. That we are 12 days or 14 days before the Olympia, and they got a skeleton crew on the Wipe Cut Back site. And, really their marquee person, the person who brings, like him or not, he's been on the Olympia stage forever, Shawn Ray.
He's the only ray of credibility they have over there. Pretty much.
He's got credibility in terms of he's been there, he's done that. So he is their marquee guy running into the Olympia. Nothing against Ron Harris, who's a hard worker, but he's not been on the Olympia stage.
Well, you and I haven't been on the Olympia stage either. People
I know,
but
I've had like 300 people who been. I have a history of helping bodybuilders who have been on that Olympia stage. Some who have, probably would never even dream of being on that stage. Mm-hmm. So there's some credibility of, okay, Chris might be 100 pounds and, looked like a classic bodybuilder, and that's about it. But he's helped people get to that stage when being a guru was not even in vogue.
Well, I think let's just call it like it is, even though we might not like some of the things that Shawn says, and that he might, when he puts pictures of Grim Reapers up after Dallas McCarver dies, it's in poor taste. He has his own strong opinions, and a lot of them sometimes are, pretty accurate. So you got to give him that. And now Blackman has no one with any credibility there. Obviously, Peter McGuff, who bumped me at the Arnold, left soon after that. Probably was owed money, I'm sure. That's what I heard through the grapevine. Even though he was attacking me like I was like the enemy.
Isn't it funny, the irony of it all?
Now,
in March, you were trying to get an interview with Arscanani, and you were like WWF'd with
between Shawn and Peter McGuff, and they're
Peter
both gone.
And they tried to make you out as the bad guy, and now they're gone. Yeah. It's like the desert.
Yeah, I find it very amusing, actually.
So my take on it is, you said I have insight. Yeah, I think I do, into scenarios and people. That is not a, everyday resignation. Like you wake up 14 days before the Olympia and say, you know what? I know the Olympia is coming up. I know I've been on stage 12 times there. I've covered it for 9 years. I think I'm just going to test the waters and do different things and, carve out a different niche in the industry and not go to this year's Olympia, even though I'm being paid. There's way more to it than there is, period.
Now, is it
speculation?
Shawn?
That's speculation, but I bought Bitcoin when it was cheap. I'm a good speculator.
Is it Shawn leaving, or is it Blackman, firing? Who do you think is responsible for Shawn resigning?
I think they had. Let's see. Let me see if my wiretaps are working. I think my wiretaps tell me that they had a heated argument, and the argument had to do with Shawn's inappropriate responses to tragedies in the sport 2 in a row, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh, so you think Shawn said, "Look, I can do anything. I can report it any way I want," and Blackman was maybe Blackman was taking heat from people because obviously Shawn represents him.
If you listen to the show 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said Shawn is Shawn. He's going to say what he says, and he's consistently always says what he says, no matter how odd or vulgar or disrespectful it may come out. And in this context, it was about people's losing their lives. But I didn't defend Shawn, but I said, that's our expectation. We're not surprised. But at the same time, who should take the fall for it is Steve Blackman.
Yeah, well, he was representing him.
It's, it's like me. Some guy goes over and he goes into an apartment and he's working for me. He's working for me. The buck stops with me.
Yeah.
I'm the guy employing him. So, in the same analogy, Steve is my beef was entirely with Steve with what happened in the last 2 weeks. where two people lost their lives, the response seemed like mean-spirited.
Yeah. Shawn did.
But the person who delivered the mean-spirited, take on the situation seems like, frankly, kind of like a mean-spirited guy.
This is what Shawn texted to me. I don't think this is a private text at all. I think this is his statement probably. He said he's all paid up, but he's moving on because he had no clarity on how to achieve a raise, commission, or stability, and he had no written contract.
Well,
company cuts.
All
Let me finish.
those are 100% true.
Yeah.
And there's something that called the straw that breaks a camel's back. There's a pivot or a tipping point that causes those positions that Shawn holds that are all valid.
Yeah, they are valid.
Where you say, okay, this is enough. And I think that has to do with what happened, recently.
I think that Shawn's been fighting.
It's hard to talk about it actually without being respectful. It's hard to actually discuss it without losing context and disrespecting the people who lost their lives recently.
Yeah. Well, I think that Shawn is an inappropriate person, but I don't think Bleckman would have fired him because I think Bleckman likes controversy. I think that Shawn was having a lot of trouble.
Maybe Bleckman was feeling the heat.
I think Shawn was having a lot of problems collecting money from Bleckman, and he probably gave him a deadline. And Bleckman, of course, ignored the deadline. And Shawn probably said, I'm just going to leave. That's all. Why should I go to the Olympia? You even pointed out to me the other day when I mentioned to you, you said probably, or maybe it was Romano who said, that Bleckman probably makes Shawn lay out all his own money, and then he pays him back. And Shawn probably just didn't want to have to go chase him for it, anymore. I don't blame it. I don't blame him. Do you?
No, I mean, money's, just because you asked Shawn, was money involved? And Shawn said, we're all paid up. But money is still involved when you have no long-term agreement and no clarity, which is parroting exactly what Shawn did actually report and say.
Yeah.
So although it's not money, he is getting paid. The bigger picture is security.
Sure.
Am I getting paid for the next 3 months?
or the next 3 years.
Do I have a 2-year contract?
Yeah.
And to come to Shawn's defense, I did work with Steve Bleckman once, and my contract was up, and I asked him point blank, what about my contract? And of course, what do you think his answer was?
Probably like, we'll talk about it, Chris.
No, even more squirmish.
Oh, bro, we're family. Did he give you that one?
Yeah, and add to it. You want to know, David, on the read on people, what about my contract? The contract is the main subject in my question. The answer was outside of family, which is a red flag, because I'm not even close to my real family, let alone, an MD Mystique family. His response was, you're getting paid, right?
Oh, my God.
The point was...
He didn't want to re-sign the contract with you, yeah.
I remember this was at a...
No, because he wanted to pay you for as long as he wanted to pay you, and this way he can get out of it at any time because it was no contract.
So I said, I didn't ask you if I was getting paid. I didn't ask you about if we were family. I asked you about the contract. So I understand Shawn's frustration, and I understand as well the idea that, look, I've given you loyalty of 9.5 years. And one thing about Shawn is he did give Steve his loyalty. And there's only so much you can, give until somebody doesn't, equally give back. And if you're asking for security more than anything else, not that you're getting your checks every month, it becomes an issue.
Yeah, you're right.
And maybe it was this. Maybe it was this. Steve thought that he could string him along to the Olympia like a couple more checks, and maybe Shawn just had enough. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And draw, as Trump or Obama would say, a red line. You cross this. I need a contract. And he probably bluffed it and thinking Shawn would put up with it until after the Olympia.
Right.
And Shawn just said, I'm not crossing this line.
Yeah.
So if Shawn did, even though I don't like Shawn, good for Shawn.
Well, I think
because
Bleckman's the villain in this whole thing. Shawn is Shawn, like you said, and Bleckman is doing this to not just Shawn, but he's done it to every person from Bob Ciccarello. All these people left because they're not going to admit it, but they all were owed money,
Yeah.
So I wonder if Ron Harris is being paid.
I'm sure he's being paid without a contract.
Do you think that he was paid all the back money he was owed, or is Blackman still behind in arrears with him?
With who?
With Ron. He was owed over $100,000.
He's in arrears for sure. He's in arrears for sure.
So he can never leave.
No contract.
Right, he can never leave that.
There's no way. And you know what? And there's something rotten in life called leverage. And Blackman has leverage over Ron. He knows that Ron needs that check. So since he knows that, he's using it against him,
right?
And using it as a tool, and not paying him on time, because he knows, where's Ron going to go?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. All right, Chris, we got to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the North American Championships and the Pittsburgh Pro Masters Championships. A lot of interesting action that occurred this past weekend. I think it was over 4 or 5 days. So, huge show. Guys, stay tuned. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
A legendary name in hardcore supplementation. Iron Mag Labs. 100% original, patent pending andro compounds. The most effective hardcore, groundbreaking bodybuilding supplements in the world. Iron Mag Labs. Revolutionizing hardcore supplementation for more than a decade. Visit ironmaglabs.com. ironmaglabs.com.
Welcome back to Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, talking with Chris, the technician Aceto. And Chris, we are less than 2 weeks out from the Olympia weekend this year, as you know, and the excitement is brewing. But we had a busy weekend this past weekend. I'm so happy that I wasn't there, to be honest with you, even though I had people competing in it. I can't take these 4-day shows, but I love it for the sport because the sport's growing. There was thousands of people competing this past weekend. There was tons of pro cards given away. Thank God that Gary Udit and Jim Mannion are doing these insanely big shows in Pittsburgh because it's great for the athletes. But I just cannot. I'm too old, I think. I'm too old to sit through. I don't think even when I was in my 20s I could have sat through 4 days of shows. But it's a tough weekend. But someone's got to do it. Luckily, it's someone else. We just get to report on it. And let's start first with the. There was a Masters Pro World Championships. Now, what Gary does is, and it's a very smart thing he does, you pay an entry fee. Usually pros don't have to pay an entry fee. They buy their pro card at the beginning of the year, and they can do whatever shows they want. This show, you pay an entry fee, and all that money that is paid into Gary gets used for prize money for the top placing people, which is great. So you could actually win prize money at the show. So the good people go home with the prize money. The bad people pay for it, basically. And you can go obviously on ifbbpro.com. You can look at all the scorecards, and there was a lot of champions. But I wanted to mention, we spoke about him. I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago when Art Gutierrez turned pro in the Masters Nationals at 70 and over. We were talking about Art. Is very well known in our industry. He worked for Body Masters for many years. He worked for a lot of different companies. He was involved from the very beginning of the weight equipment industry. And I'm going to interview him. We actually interviewed, but we had a connection problem. So I'm going to read it. I told him right after he did this show because he was going to jump right into his first pro show, which was 4 weeks later, and he just won, Chris. He won the Masters 70 and over pro division. Got a real check. His first check from competing in bodybuilding, which he's been doing since God knows how long, before you and me were probably born. And I just want to give a big congratulations out to him. I know he listens to the show, and I know that all his friends will tell him about it. Art, you turned pro and won your first pro show in the same year. Now you can retire. And that's what he told me he was going to do. So congratulations to that. Do you know, also, just for your own purposes, Chris, there was also an 80 and over category. There's only one guy in it, James Arrington. And can you believe that, 80 and over? Who would have thought 10 years ago that there would have been guys 80 and over competing?
Well, ESPN probably covered it. That's sarcasm.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy. It's crazy. You know what? It honestly, I mean, we're jumping ahead, but it was, what's the guy's Smith name? Don Smith?
Well, yeah, that we're going to get to Don in a minute. In the North American championships part of it, which was the the amateur show that took place probably on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Don Smith, who's been on this show before as well, who was the inventor of California Crazy Wear with Gary Stridham back in the day, he missed his pro card at the Masters Nationals, and then he competed again this past weekend. He won the 60 and over and got his pro card. So he looks amazing. I mean, you saw the pictures of him. He could probably be mistaken for a 40-something-year-old guy.
Well, how about the guy? I am jumping ahead. Masters over 70, one guy, but he looks crazy for 70 over 70.
That's what Art Gutierrez won. So, it is incredible because
over 70. Art won what? Over 60?
Oh no, over 70. Art.
Is Art over? Oh my God.
Art's over 70 years old. That dates you, huh?
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Now, in the men's open division, Seth Shaw won. And I didn't know who this was. I've never really seen him. I didn't really know much about him. But, I looked at the pictures, and what a great structure this guy's got. Tall. It seems like there's a lot of tall. There were never tall guys back in bodybuilding. Over the last 25 years, all of a sudden lately, there's been a string of these super tall guys that have been really doing very well in bodybuilding. What do you account for that?
I have no idea.
Isn't it weird?
I have no idea. It is weird because usually, traditionally, right, if you get a tall, super heavy, he's got so many gaps in his physique.
No legs.
Never place higher than like fourth.
Yeah. And all of a sudden we have a ton of them now. Cedric better watch out. The tall guys are coming back.
This guy's tall with a small waist.
Yeah.
You know what? He tall with a small waist, and he beat. A couple.
He's got good legs too. He's got good legs.
Tremendous legs.
The last big tall guy with legs was probably Tony Freeman.
Yeah.
And Paul Dillette had really good legs too when he competed. And he was a tall guy, but most guys didn't. Most guys didn't. Jimmy Quinn had good legs.
This guy trains legs. Dillette didn't even train him.
He didn't.
I don't think he did. Oh no, he did. He did train legs. He didn't train shoulders and arms.
He didn't need to. I heard he would do 10-pound dumbbell curls for his arms, and they would blow up to 25 inches.
Yeah, he would.
Crazy genetics.
No, but this kid's good. He looks great.
It wasn't, to me, the show. I looked at the pictures and the results, and the show wasn't that difficult. The guy who won was really good, but I wasn't that impressed with some of the other weight class winners. I've seen better North American championships before. Would you agree?
I think.
I'm talking about the men's open. I'm not talking about the other classes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because I wasn't there. But, I mean, the light heavy winner looks tremendous to me. I mean, he's got a couple weaknesses, but his condition was outstanding. And, big legs, could be taper. I
always judge people, Chris, by how they can do as a pro. You win a pro card. How would you do as a pro? That's always my evaluation. I don't know if that's the right way to evaluate, but that's how I do it. And
I think everyone runs into trouble.
Yeah, I think the one kid who won has some good potential for next year doing something.
Me too. I totally agree. But you never know. Some of the guys are going to get bigger from here, who don't even win the class. But in terms of the people who won the class and got their pro cards, David, Henry, Jose. I mean, think of the people we just talked about.
Yeah.
Dexter, Ramy, Heath. My goodness.
Did you see your good buddy there, Justin Miller? His clients did pretty well. Got some pro cards.
Yeah, the
Amit Roy.
Talk about classic. Yeah,
Amit Roy.
Tremendous.
Amit was a guy who came over from India. He had a dream of being, a pro bodybuilder. And he was working with my friend Justin. I don't know how they got in touch with each other, but he did. And the problem was he couldn't qualify. There was no division for him to do because he wasn't a U.S. citizen, and it was almost impossible for him to turn pro. He did a couple Arnold amateurs. It was very difficult. And eventually, I don't think he got married. I think he married a girl here, and he got his citizenship. And he'd been doing the nationals, and now then Classic Physique came out, and obviously that was right up his alley. And he did the Classic Physique Class A. He won that, and he won the overall. Pretty impressive.
He has tremendous legs.
He gets shredded.
Tremendous side chest. Just lot of muscle maturity. Intercostals, you don't see that much anymore.
Yeah.
Crazy intercostals.
Yeah, my question is, I think he might be the first Indian, not American Indian guy to win an overall at a pro qualifying show in the U.S. I don't know of anyone else. Do you?
Can't think of off the top of my head.
I think he might be the first. Alexis Rolón was the first Puerto Rican to win the nationals overall. And I think Amit might be the first Indian guy. I don't know of any. I don't even know of any Indian pros. Do you? Aside from Sharu.
No, I don't.
I don't know where Sharu got his pro card, but he got it somehow. Now he just has a show named after him. A couple shows named after him.
You know what Sharu means?
I do. I saw that movie, and I can't remember it now.
That's where I just saw the movie the other day. I saw the end of the movie.
I know you love that movie, yeah. What was the name of the movie? The Lion? Something of the Lion?
Yeah. Well, that's what Sharu means, lion.
Lion, right. So maybe Samir had the wrong name. Samir should have been Sharu Banud, right? The Lion of Lebanon.
Samir's been doing posing with Roden, by the way.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to work on hand positions or... I don't know if he's going to shake because he always had electrolyte imbalances.
Steve Lorius, the guy we were raving about a few weeks ago, who won a show in New Jersey, he got his pro card, but he took second in the class. He didn't even win his class. I don't know if he looked as good as he did a couple weeks ago.
Well, it's the same old. It could be, who you're competing against. Sometimes it boils down to that.
Right. Like I said, I think the classic physique guys at the North American were way better than the open guys in terms of quality. Let's not talk about quantity. Let's not talk about muscle mass. I'm talking about quality.
Well, it goes back to by definition, if you're trying to build a classic physique, you're thinking etched detail. And the 212 class, by virtue of them having a weight class, it forces you often to have etched detail. The open is still about freaks. So I'm saying the pro open. We'd like to see something freaky. That's why we love to see Rolly Winkler.
Right.
We know he's not going to win the Olympia, but he's going to get probably one of, if not the biggest crowd responses when he first comes out.
Yeah.
Even if he's, not, quote, at his best, or he's not as hard as Amit Roy, or if he's not as hard as the classic winner, the 212 guy, there's just the bells and whistles of freakiness.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The classic guys look like they're bringing in a level of detail that surpasses the open, but that is what creates a part of what creates a classic-looking physique is, pec striations. There's a lot of people with big pecs, right? But not a lot of people with deep, deep striations. You can go down the list in some of these classic shows and see the guy who got fifth. Crazy pec striations.
I'm trying to count. The reason you don't hear me talk, I'm trying to count up how many men's physique pro cards
you lost count.
I lost count because I couldn't focus that long. I'm going to try to do it again. Hold on. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Oh, I lost count again. 2, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. Hold on. 30, 32, 34, 36, 38 pro cards. I don't think there was 38 pro cards given out in the history of bodybuilding for the first 20 years. Oh my God! David Smith wins the men's open overall, but they also gave out Masters pro cards too as well. Crazy. But you know what? When you have 1,000 people in the show, you got to give out a lot of pro cards. It's a small percentage of everyone who's competing.
Well, you used to listen. You're the guy who said we need a classic division, and people laughed at you.
Yeah.
You were. But you used to say, as the North Americans started to grow and grow and grow,
yeah.
And I think you just threw it out there as just to shock people. We need a 4-day show.
We do. I don't want to be there, but we do.
It's 4 days now, right? It's 4 days. It's crazy.
It absolutely is. It's going to
You
be
can't do it in 3.
Well, it'll be a week soon. Pretty soon it'll be a whole week, and that's fine. The good thing about that is you don't have to be there the whole week.
Yeah.
You go out there, you do your class, and you fly home. That's all. That's what guys are doing now. Used to be a whole weekend. You stay for, you watch the other shows. It's too long now. Even the people compete. They come in, they compete, and they leave, which is good because it frees up the hotel for like other people to come and stay in the hotel there. Well, anyway, Gary Udit did a great job. He always does a great job at these shows, and of course Jim Mannion. It's his backyard there. So they put on a top rate show. If you guys want to like seriously feel like it's like a family affair there. It's a very intimate environment. It's in the ballroom of that Sheraton Station Square Hotel. If you're smart and you reserve your room ahead of time, you stay right in the hotel. You come down the elevator, you're at the ballroom. It doesn't get much easier than that. It's just a long weekend, and so you have to really plan and make sure you have your food with you. But the hotel has a buffet there that always has clean food you can get. I mean, it's a very, very good setup. Like I said, I've been there for many, 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 many years. I've gone there, and I just think it's one of the best setups they got because you don't feel like you're at a big-time show in the sense where it's intimidating, but at the same time, it's a nice setup there, and it's the booths are all surrounding the inside of the venue, so you can go and visit the booths while you're watching the show. I always like that show. I like the North American, and I like the Masters Nationals. But once again, it's a very, very long weekend. You have to have a lot of free time on your hand for that. Well, once again, stay tuned, guys, all week long. We're going to have tons and tons of interviews, and we're going to be doing versus, virtual showdowns between different competitors. We have Iron Debate, Iron Rage. I'm going to be doing some rants. Of course, Muscle in the Mornings every day. This week is going to be chock full of Olympia, pre-Olympia content, all sponsored thanks to Yamamoto Nutrition and Protan. And also the following week, obviously leading up to the Olympia, we'll have our, I'm sure we'll have our prediction shows. I haven't figured out who's going to be on the show. We might do another Guru Mania, Chris. I'm not sure, but I know you're going to you'll probably be in Vegas because you're leaving on Monday, right?
Yeah. Yep. All
right. Well, that's all right. As long as you have Wi-Fi in the room. Are you staying at your usual stronghold, the Platinum Hotel?
Yeah, I'm staying there, but it was like devastatingly hard to get a room because it used to be no one knew about it, but because
we talk about it now, everyone knows.
Yeah, we talk about it now. People stay there. It's filled with it used to be the non-bodybuilding, nobody knew about it hotel, and now it's like full of fans.
You know who told me about that hotel? Believe it or not, Sheila Black. She founded that hotel first, I think, years ago. Because I've been helping
Guy will get mad. He said he found it.
She found it before Guy was even fucking competing, probably. But it is a good hotel. It's very, very convenient, and it's got all the amenities, and they're big, huge apartment rooms. And we'll never get in there again now that I just threw that out there.
I know.
I won't announce where I go to eat sushi anymore because I don't want anyone going there. Because the Diet Coach always has 400 people there every time I go there, and I can't get a table. So I'm not revealing. I'll be at the Orleans Arena, believe it or not, because Yamamoto Nutrition, thankfully, because I hadn't have the foresight to actually anticipate getting a room ahead of time. I go every single year. You think I would just reserve a room?
Well, you get too much going on.
Yeah, I forget. And I
think, maybe this year. Number 2 comes.
Yeah. I always think to myself, well, maybe I won't go this year. You never, I might not go to the Olympia or something like that. And it is what it is. I always wind up going. Got a Super Bowl body. I wonder if Blackman will go. You think he'll show up after?
Of course. Maybe you can interview him.
Yeah. He might be actually tagging pictures this weekend himself because I don't think he has any other employees.
He wouldn't know how to. He don't know how to.
Elise, where do I put these pictures? Where do I upload them to? Oh, my God. Never changes. I got to find out where Steve's going to steakhouse. What steakhouses he's going to. We'll show up, Chris. Once Blackman has a couple glasses of wine in him, he'll be much more likely to talk to us.
Well, he's really going to have to do guerrilla coverage this week.
That's right.
He's going to have what? What's going to be going on?
He's got Ron line. Ron can just you know how like when you Skype like you're away and you Skype your kid like at home. And you're just like, oh hey, what's up? And hope everything's good. I'll be home in a day or two. That's what they're covered. That's what their interviews are like. They record.
Why cut back, Dave? Why cut back?
Why cut? It doesn't pay, right?
It does not pay.
Isn't that what he told you? What year was that he told you that?
I don't know. I had saved the text. It was 2013.
Okay, so that's 4 years ago, and we finally have an answer for him. Steve, you cut back because you don't want to go out of business and lose all your employees. That's why you cut back.
It should have been, why cut back? I don't pay.
That's right. And on that note, we are out of time. Until next week, remember, with Heavy Muscle Radio,
the truth hurts.